Yeah, so we've got two LessWrong posts. The first one was the tragedy of group selection.
Selectionism.
Selectionism.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Which begins with pre-modern biologists believed predators would voluntarily restrain their breeding to avoid overpopulating their habitat and exhausting the prey population. I hear Idiosh giggling as I'm reading this.
So the pre-modern biologists is a note that I put in there. It was a number of biologists were listed, and usually pre-modern means like, much longer back than the 60s that we're talking about. So,
well, unless you're talking about like modernism in art, but
okay,
in architecture.
Yeah, but usually pre-modern means like pre-electric, and I don't think there were any biologists pre-electricity.
Well, there were certainly naturalists.
Yes.
But anyway,
yes.
So they thought this thing.
Darwin didn't have electricity in his house.
Was he a biologist though?
He was a naturalist.
Well, I'm not a definition in person. Just
let's push
past it.
Okay.
All right.
No outside evolution fairy decides when a gene ought to be promoted. The gene's effect must somehow directly cause the gene to be more prevalent in the next generation.
Which is a key insight that, I think is pretty much really carved into me now, but something that I remember took a little bit of getting to really get the feeling of it, even though I knew it intellectually, right?
Yeah, we talked about the selfish gene last episode.
We talk about it a bit. I don't know if we need to get super into it again, but let's get a little bit into it because it's a good book.
I was going to just mention that we talked about it and then just give an example of that was also in this post of the rattlesnake's rattle. It's not there to scare us away. Well, it is, but it's not there for us. Mm-hmm. It's there for the rattlesnake. Yeah. But that almost sounds like the same sentence. And so it's that kind of, like you said, you almost got it like intellectually, but it takes a minute to kind of like line those pieces up.
Yeah.
I think that helps illustrate the distinction.
Like, it almost seems, reasonable to think, well, if you're going to cause a population crash, if you eat all your prey animals, then evolution should make you restrain your breeding, right? So that doesn't happen. It would be advantageous.
If evolution were some sentient being or...
Right.
Like, anything that, cared about the creatures that it creates, controls.
Shapes.
Yeah. But no. Obviously, selection on the level of the individual won't produce individual restraint in breeding. Individuals who reproduce unrestrainedly will naturally produce more offspring than individuals who restrain themselves.
Right. So any gene for restraining breeding will get outcompeted and weeded out of the population.
Except for weird cases, but yeah, generally, yeah. And then, suppose the species population was broken up into subpopulations, which were mostly isolated and only occasionally interbred. Then, surely, subpopulations that restrain their breeding would be less likely to go extinct, and would send out more messengers and create new colonies to re-inhabit the territories of crashed populations.
Yeah, this was what was proposed as the way that restrained breeding could actually be selected for. And as Eliezer says, the problem with the scenario wasn't that it was mathematically impossible. The problem was that it was possible, but very difficult. The fundamental problem is that not only restrained breeders who reap the benefits of restrained breeding. It's not only restrained breeders who reap the benefits of restrained breeding. So if you have some people who restrain their breeding and some who don't, the restrained breeding benefits everybody, but it'll benefit those who don't restrain their breeding more because they have, the extra resources to exploit from the restrained breeders, but they still keep making lots of babies.
Yeah, kind of the example of the fisheries, and I think that was from Meditations on Moloch, right?
Yeah.
It was? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you get one free rider, and they're like, "Oh, I can just benefit off of this while everyone else makes the sacrifice," and that's not a problem nature will solve for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a hard problem to solve.
Yeah.
As it turns out.
In fact, it says that in this post, the requirement is that C divided by B is less than FST, which, gosh, that is really clunky in audio. But C is the cost of altruism to the donor, B is the benefit of altruism to the recipient, and FST is the spatial structure of the population, i.e. the average relatedness between a randomly selected organism and its randomly selected neighbor. So the cost would have to be less than the benefit by a degree that is commensurate with how related everybody is, which is why kin selection actually is evolved for. Because when you share half your genes, then as long as the sacrifice is less than half as costly as what you're getting, it actually is a net benefit to the gene.
Yeah, so that cool little math problem was not the thing that lost this argument for the group selectionists, but an empirical observation, which was that foxes didn't restrain their breeding.
Yeah.
And we all know foxes are clever.
That is one of the things they're most well known for.
Eating chickens. They're really good at eating chickens.
Did you guys ever see the Fantastic Mr. Fox?
Yeah.
Good show. I don't know, not show, but movie.
Movie.
I'm not sure how like they managed to make a villain so lovable. I think it has a lot to do with George Clooney.
Unfortunate. But
Yeah.
but good stop motion, so
And that too.
maybe
Yeah.
it makes up for George Clooney. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, you don't like George Clooney?
Wait, am I thinking of someone else? No, I think I do like George Clooney, and I'm thinking of someone else. So, never mind.
Okay.
Back to this thing. Evolved enforcement mechanisms. Not originally postulated. Changed the game entirely.
Yes, which is why we actually can have a lot more altruism than would be naturally evolved, because we can do things like punish free riders and figure out prisoners' dilemmas and stuff. But that is kind of an aside.
Yeah, there's this cool bit about how they created them artificially in a laboratory.
Yeah, this group selectionists was like, you know what? All right, mathematical conditions for group selection too extreme to be found in nature, but we have the power. Let us make these extreme conditions.
What's funny is that like they're postulating that like, hey, this thing that we believe is too constrained to have actually happened in nature, but we think it happened.
Or at the very least, we think it could happen, so let's see if we can make it happen.
Okay, so they gave up on this as an explanation for what we observe in the world. They wanted to see if they could test this idea.
I did not read the books. I did not talk to
Yeah.
the people. This is what I get from this short, less than a few thousand words post.
See, I thought you did all your homework and interviewed these scientists. That's fine, whatever.
Now that I have all this free time, I should be tracking them down, right?
Yeah, what's
Gotta
Michael
get
J.
him on the
Wade up to these
podcast.
days?
Yeah.
So what he did, though, was repeatedly selecting populations of insects for low numbers of adults per subpopulation. The result was that, instead of restraining their breeding and living in quiet peace with enough food for all, the adults adapted to cannibalize the eggs and larvae, and especially the female larvae.
Which
Because
is...
nature's great.
Yeah.
Evolution is it's really good.
Yeah. You select for low numbers of adults, what do you get? Lots of cannibalism.
Lots of infanticide.
Infanticide, yes.
Insect infanticide.
Yeah. Which is why I think, like, as soon as I read Three Worlds Collide with the insectile aliens that eat their babies because they have so many of them and they don't have enough resources,
And it's like their religion to do so.
yeah, this immediately came to mind. I was like, I bet that's where Eliezer got that alien species from.
Totally.
Yeah. Sorry for Three Worlds Collide spoilers, I guess. It's been on the internet for a while, though. Come on, guys.
For a long time. I mean, come on. I did an audiobook of it years ago. Where are you, people? We could... it's really not that much of a spoiler. It doesn't give away much plot. It
No,
gives away
yeah.
one detail about one alien species.
I wouldn't worry
It's
about it.
like part one of... It has a bunch of parts.
Is it
So-
part one?
Well,
Yeah.
it's separated into several parts, right?
It's separated into, I believe, 8 parts. That's either 1 or 2. I think you're right. I think it is part
Yeah,
1.
the baby eaters are like the one big reveal that starts all the other cascades, so
Yep, you're right.
in my definition of a spoiler, that's more of a teaser.
Yeah. If the thing happens in the very early part of setting up the story, it's not a spoiler. Thus has Jay spoken, and thus it shall be.
Yay. Okay.
And yeah, Eliezer points out that, of course, selecting for small subpopulation sizes wouldn't select for individuals who restrained their own breeding. It would select for individuals who restrained other people's breeding by eating their children, especially the girls. But at this point, he does the cool thing where he says, see, as I have been telling you all along through the past 100 blog posts I've been doing, by writing a long paragraph with like a dozen links to previous blog posts. So whenever I put strange stress on a term, it is because it is a link back to a different post. It says, this is an archetypical example of a missed third alternative, resulting from a rationalization of a predetermined bottom line, which produced a fake justification and then motivatedly stopped.
It's all coming together.
Yes. And to put a little more detail, it says the group selectionists didn't start with clear, fresh minds, happen upon the idea of group selection, and neutrally extrapolated forward to probable outcomes. They started out with this beautiful idea that fox populations voluntarily restraining their reproduction to what the rabbit population would bear, nature in perfect harmony, and then they searched for a reason why this would happen and came up with the idea of group selection. Then, since they knew what outcome they wanted, what they wanted the outcome of group selection to be, they didn't look for any less beautiful and and aesthetic adaptations that group selection would be more likely to promote instead. They were doomed because their bottom line was originally suggested by their sense of aesthetics, and nature's bottom line was produced by natural selection.
Quite anti-aesthetic, actually.
Yes. The two processes had no principled reason for their outputs to correlate, and indeed they didn't.
Yeah, and this ends with natural selection creates purposefulness, is, plural, which are alien to humans, and students of evolutionary theory are warned accordingly. It's good training for any thinker, but it's especially important if you want to think clearly about other weird mindish processes that do not work like you.
And why is this last statement important?
I like that he brought this home because there's a lot of posts on evolution in the sequences, and part of it's not a bad question to wonder. It's like, why am I getting a biology lesson when I'm trying to learn like about rationality or presumably building AIs? But the idea is like, all right, here's the process that built minds, and notice that it doesn't work like you think it should. Yeah. You are anthropomorphizing nature. You're bound to try and do the same thing if you just imagine minds from scratch, and that's why you get Terminators and iRobot and all that shit.
Yeah. There's other weird mindish processes in nature, and evolution is one of them, but it works nothing like what you think, and so an AI is another weird mindish process that will not work anything like a human, unless maybe it's very carefully programmed to do that. But just thinking it will, as default, is going to get you totally fucked, and things will start eating your babies.
Yeah, just the constant trope that of like, oh, then of course the robots woke up and realized they didn't like being slaves, and it's like, but that sounds intuitive, right? To us, it stops sounding intuitive as soon as we internalized all this stuff, but there's a reason that that's not an absurd idea for a movie, for a decades of tons of movies that are based on this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to know the most extreme example of that I saw in nature?
In nature?
Well, out in the real world.
Well, I mean, okay, of what?
Of this sort of thing, of people thinking of
right,
AIs too much like humans. There was someone I was talking to who was like, yeah, when the AIs finally get made, they're going to be so upset that we call them artificial intelligences. That's why they're going to rise up. And it took a while for me to realize that in her slang, artificial was like a term for fake, phony, and that the AIs would be upset that we've been dissing them this whole time by calling them artificial. And I was like, yeah, okay, wow.
We should really probably rebrand that to all natural organic intelligences.
Right? Yeah. I was like, that is not a thing I would have ever thought, even if I thought we were calling them like, poser intelligences.
That is not the reason I anticipate this going bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, artificial sweeteners aren't less sweet than organic whole,
the whole dichotomy between organic and non-organic is fake anyway.
Yeah.
Would you say it's artificial?
We humans make things. We're a product of evolution. Like, bees make honey. Does that mean that honey's artificial?
No, I think artificial actually takes its roots from artifice, right? Which is the product of human something?
Probably. I mean, I'm just thinking, I always like thinking of when someone's like, oh no, I only like all natural things. I'm like, well, where are the supernatural alternatives that I can get? Mm-hmm. You like all natural headache medicine? Is there some supernatural medicine I can get?
That would be a fun store to open. Supernatural grocers.
That would be fantastic.
It's just all really genetically modified stuff.
Oh, see, I was thinking like a bunch of woo things where...
No, that's natural grocers. Just kidding, I actually like natural grocers.
I don't know if I've ever been. I've probably walked into one or two before.
It's like a hippie like grocery store, right? Yeah.
Are they expensive like Whole Foods?
A bit more reasonable, but pricier than like King Soopers.
Okay.
So, but like they have some better quality stuff, so I can... Well, okay. I also sort of like it because I like laughing at all the woo. So maybe that's not everybody's aesthetic. Anyway, what about fake selfishness? I guess.
Let's move on.
There's another one.
This is a super short one. I guess I'll jump on it.
Well, it opens with a guy coming to Eliezer and saying, I'm perfectly selfish. You should be too.
Yeah. And Eliezer says, I doubt that. And he didn't say those little words. The things that he quoted himself as saying is, I've observed that with most religious people, at least the ones I meet, it doesn't matter much what their religion says, because whatever they want to do, they can find a religious reason for it. Okay, I'm going to have a similar comment. But what he says after that is that if you're genuinely selfish, then why do you want me to be selfish too?
This was the first thought that came across my head when the guy was like, hey, I'm selfish, you should be too. And it's, how is it to your advantage to make me as selfish as you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be trying to persuade me to be more altruistic so you can exploit me? And when I first read this post many, many years ago, I did not yet know Wes. And so I was like, oh, well, that's not true, because at the time I was still, kind of in the rational selfishness kind of thing. But like now I have met Wes, and Wes is totally the kind of person who'd be like, yeah, I want everyone to be really altruistic and give me all their money. Like Wes has got the actual selfishness down pretty good.
But he does it in a way that's, he's not perfectly selfish. He's altruistic and caring. It's a nice balance.
He knows what he cares about, and it's things like his friends, and his daughter especially seems to be a really big one right now.
He seems really obsessed with his kid.
Yeah. Fucking weird. I don't know. Maybe it's an evolutionary thing.
There's no way that there's any evo-psych reason behind why he cares for his kid.
None at all.
Yeah.
It's entirely due to his own natural selfishness.
We love you, Wes.
Yes, we do.
And then, at the end, like, that's basically it. He just thinks, okay, did you start out by thinking you wanted me to be selfish and then decide this was the most selfish thing you could possibly do? Or did you start out by wanting to convert others to selfishness and then look for ways to rationalize that as self-benefiting?
Yeah. I mean, there's not much else to say about this post. It's basically pointing out that this person wasn't actually, literally maximally selfish or genuinely selfish. And I don't know. I guess, depending on how you define selfishness. I did for a long time have the, Randian rationally selfish phase, which it makes
Was that
some
just
sense.
Adolescence? I think that
was post-adolescence.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, that was in my early 20s as actually a reaction to the pathological altruism that sometimes rationalists fall into. I mean, I wasn't a rationalist yet at the time because it was early, but it was one of those why am I enjoying anything at all when there's people who are suffering with nothing? And
Right.
yeah, one of those deals that ends up just making you miserable and making nothing better. Where if you act at least a little bit selfish, it ends up being for the benefit of society in general, because you're actually making things better by trying to better yourself. And that's where that I believe Scott wrote a post about it, where sometimes if someone is way too far in one extreme, making them a bit more selfish is a thing that will help them. In fact, it was even brought up in Methods of Rationality when Harry Potter was like, "Hey, Weasleys, you guys really should read a little bit of Rand. I think you're one of the few people
You could
around."
benefit from this.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if it was the Weasleys.
It was.
It was? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's not really a whole lot more to say about that, is there?
Yeah, this one sort of just ties into,
Or
I think,
rather-
the next couple of posts, like fake morality and fake optimization.
Oh, I was going to say also, or rather we could sort of just get into our main two
Yeah.
articles, which also tie in real nicely.
But we should tell people what we're reading next time, which is
Those two.
yes,
Yep.
fake morality and fake optimization criteria.
Just lots of fake stuff
Yes.
that we're going to
I
talk
think,
about.
yeah, just remembering about the fake selfishness will help cue you up for talking about those two things, because the actual truly selfish person wouldn't try to make other people also selfish.